Today I'm delighted to be joined by Lee Kemp. Lee, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Lee, could you give the listeners your background experience?
Yeah, I try and crunch it down into, the many years. I've got some grey hairs, but I try and get it into as succinct as I can. In the 90s, I worked for a company based in the southwest, in Cornwall to be specific, that's part of the CB Group. They merged with BTR Group, and they became Invencis, that some of you may have heard of. When I was working with Invencis, I have a manufacturing background and worked on the shop floor CNC machinist, and then worked my way through to production engineering, and then into senior roles in manufacturing. And when the company I was working for was basically come under the Invencis banner, I found myself in a lean leadership role. So I became the lean sensei for Invencis, and then ended up going global, really, I guess, on the basis of working like Kaizen workshops or continuous improvement workshops across the globe for Invencis. And that was my start. It was back in the 90s. And
Lee, just for people that don't know what Invencis did or does, give us an insight into Invencis.
Well, the CB and BTR group of companies that had a massive array of manufacturing companies. I mean, some that probably people have heard of would be like Westinghouse, would be one of the companies. And then we've got Maxam Pneumatics, Parker Hannifin. I worked for the pneumatics division.
Yeah, interesting, good.
Yeah, but I have a whole array of different companies, but predominantly manufacturing. Yeah.
Good.
So in I guess 1997 was when I was working in that capacity. And what I found was that up to year 2000, I was based in the southwest with a young family and traveling all over the place. But it wasn't really ticking the box as far as career goes. So to cut a long story short, we uprooted from the southwest, moved away from the sea, and ended up in the heart of Derbyshire, where I am now.
Okay, right, okay.
The reason for that is I joined Rolls-Royce Aerospace in Derby as a support.
I was just going to say, why would you do that in terms of right by the seaside, sunny, to head up to Derby? Nothing against Derby. I've got done a lot of business in that area.
Yeah,
great part of the world, but.
I know. I asked myself the same questions, and so did my family. But there you go. It was just a timing thing. Everybody reaches these crossroads in their lives, and you make some choices. And my choice was that actually, at that time of my life, that I needed to do something else, when it was more career focused. So,
good on you.
Joining Rolls-Royce Aerospace in year 2000, my role as an internal consultant, really working on supply chain performance. So that, I think, as far as consultancy career goes, that's when it started, year 2000. So what's that? 20 years ago. Blimey.
Wow.
And I was with Rolls-Royce for a good couple of years. Then I started up my own consultancy practice that went spectacularly wrong. Not for my reasons, but the Twin Towers episode happened, and that had a major impact on the business. But since then, I've worked in consultancy, really as a transformational change type experience, and really my role is leading companies through change, and coaching and mentoring individuals to be able to affect change and deliver change within their organisation.
Great. And I think, tying all that in brings us nicely onto the topic that we're going to go through today, which is obviously your experience of developing internal continuous improvement change within organisations.
Yes.
Where do we start? On that? Give me an insight then. So great in terms of the intro and the background there, the relevance there. So how would you then go about that?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective is that, and from my own learning experiences, that actually a lot of people that find themselves in a continuous improvement or project management position haven't really been set up to succeed. Along the way, I've had to sort of learn from experience, and some things that have gone well, some things that haven't gone well, you know. And I think there's a much better way. So when organisations identify that they need a continuous improvement leader, or they need a continuous improvement function or organisation within it, is actually setting those people up for success. What I mean by that is, rather than them struggling along based on their own sort of technical competence, this being manufacturing, is having the technical ability is one thing, but being able to facilitate change and understand people, and people being the actual sort of common denominator here that makes either a project a success or not a success, is the sort of skills that I'm talking about. And although in your mind as a project manager or somebody that's heading up a continuous improvement effort, in your mind, you know, it makes logical sense and it's a no-brainer, this idea, but actually that's not good enough on its own. You've got to be able to have the skills to be able to put the case forward as to why the change is required in the first place, and not come up with your own personal ideas, but facilitating the ideas and solutions from others within the organisation. So these are the sorts of skills I'm talking about. It's the people-centric skills, getting people on board to actually get the change that you're looking for.
And take, for example, so an organisation, food manufacturing, they make sausages for a living, you know, they make meat or whatever, processed meat, and they're looking to improve a process within their factory or whatever it is, you know. Who would you coach? You know, get an example. Can you give us an example of how you go about that and how you would coach?
Yeah, so ordinarily what I would do is I would meet with head of operations if it's operations led, or head of HR if it's sort of, you know, support services led. But what we would do is actually with those identify the key individuals that are going to be responsible for the change, and those key individuals I would work with on a project based in the work environment to actually help them with the tools and techniques to be able to facilitate the change with the responsibility that they've been tasked with. Fundamentally, it would start with understanding the value stream, you know, what's involved from beginning to end, that would then identify where the priorities are for change. And it's really for me to coach and mentor those key individuals, so up to 5 at any one time, I would say, to give them structure, tools and techniques to be able to facilitate the change going forward.
And see, with regards to the value stream that you're talking about there, and it depends on where the process is at that step as well. Generally, with your experience in doing consultancy, generally, does it tend to be that if somebody's just thinking about making a change within their business, that they would reach out to someone like yourself, you would come in and then take the project from start to finish? Or is it a bit of a helicopter, you know, where you're coming halfway through because I've realised actually, do you want to know what? More working time and effort than what I can put in, therefore it's better to...
Yeah, it's a bit of both, really. I mean, some may be struggling, so you're going in on a reactionary basis. So they're struggling to turn around performance, so you're parachuted into really on a problem-solving basis, identifying the things that are going to turn around that performance, you know, using Pareto tools and so on. And that's more of a reactionary basis. The nice consultancy projects that I take on are ones where they're more proactive. So they're not crisis-based, they're more what do we need to do to improve and get growth up. So businesses that have got a clear or unclear growth plan, so they need support with how do they grow, how do they win more business, then I would support with that. But fundamentally is the projects that I'm predominantly engage with are ones that are starting from understand the value stream, and what do we need to turn around performance for our customers, what are the customers looking for, so the guidance with that. But that value stream drives the whole sort of continuous improvement efforts and the identification of projects that people are responsible for, that I coach and mentor. Not sure whether that makes sense or not.
No, it does, and you touched on the skill side of things, the key things, the people-centric skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about being client-centric. What I mean by that is whenever you're tasked with change, is there be some stakeholders that are obviously identified, but there also be people that are going to be affected by the change itself. So you've got a raft of people there that you need to use your skills to, one, gain rapport with each of those individuals, but also understanding what makes them tick as individuals, because everybody's motivated by different things. Some people are motivated by going to somewhere else, as a bright new future, but others are motivated by coming away from pain. So it is understanding what the makeup of each of those individuals, and also gaining that trust from the outset with those people. So that's a whole raft of skills, and I talk about the being client-centric because each one of those people within the change effort are clients in their own right. Is really taking that approach and developing the rapport. And I use one methodology. I mean, one of my weak areas when I was going through in my career was when I met somebody for the first time, as we all do, is making that instant judgment about the individual. And one guy that I come across in my career, that you come across these people that have an impact on the way that you operate as an individual, and you think, crikey, that was a defining moment in my career. And one of them was sitting down with a guy called Dr. Bob Formosa from Minneapolis, and he used to predominantly go around and do what I do, which is coach and mentor people for facilitating change. And after a couple of glasses of wine with this guy and having a meal, I opened up and I said, one of the things that I struggle with is when I meet somebody for the first time, I make an instant judgment, and I've really struggled to get them on board. I just,
stuff. Get that connection.
Yeah, and he said, I'll give you a model, Lee, and whether this is, fact or not, but I've used it ever since, is that when you meet somebody new, and I'm bringing this back to stakeholders and your clients, whenever you meet somebody new and you make that judgment, is ask yourself the question, have you spent 16 and a half hours of quality time with those individuals, either on a one-on-one or in a team setting? And if the answer is no, then how can you possibly make a judgment about that individual? And that has helped me no end. So when I'm coming across clients for the first time, is that I've got that negative thought, is that model helps me to park it, because actually I can't make any judgment. There isn't any. And I think as far as the trust equation goes both ways, that's a good model for before you can start to explore those deeper things, which is driving the behaviour of individuals within the client system.
And I think that's, it's very key in terms of what you're saying, because if you break it right down, what you're focusing on is the individuals, and actually and building that round each of the individuals to drive that change or project or whatever it might be forward, which is going to be for the benefit of whoever the client is, whatever the purpose of you being in that business. With regards, but you've went through that process, when typically do you start to see results? When does that start to come to the surface?
I see aha moments sort of straight away, really, because my approach is more around not having PowerPoint, but explaining, facilitating, using a flip chart, understanding how people learn, and really, I guess, using once you gain that rapport and you come across as credible, is really seeing the results in the way that people behave. So I guess coming back to your question, which is a difficult one to answer, but when I'm involving people in understanding the value stream, for example, and then you start to challenge some of the thinking, but in a constructive way, you see some of the benefits there, but subtle benefits from
the light bulb moment, the pennies dropping,
and it's almost like changing the thinking way in some respects of individuals. You see that straight away. But wider than that is when it comes to, you know, you've understood the value stream, you understand the priorities, you're now sort of focused on a particular area to reduce lead time or processing time or whatever it is that you're focused on, is then you're widening out the net. So you're involving shop floor, for example, in a manufacturing environment in an effort, but you're starting to listen. But you may be coaching somebody that's not used to listening. You may be coaching somebody that is a command and control type, and that style has got to be flipped to not command and control, but one of support and encourage. So what you're doing is you're actually showing the way through your own style, and the person you're.
Well, it's more people manager, isn't it? It's been a good manager, a good understanding of people, a good leader in terms of what you're trying to do, you know. But try and drilling home the purpose of what, you know, why the business wants to go through that change, you know, and really kind of painting that vision for people, but doing it in different ways that actually you're getting the full buy-in from that group of people. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your primary focus is to get results at the end of the day. So whatever the project is tasked with, you know, whatever that may be, that's your primary, is to get the result. The only way you can get the result is actually to understand what the priorities are underneath it, but connecting people to make the change required, getting them motivated, getting them engaged, getting them excited about the change required, and that's the whole skill set that I'm talking about.
So, Lee, would an example be? So, for example, back to this food processing factory, head of operations is just, you know, looking to streamline the process in terms of the line layout or whatever it might be, has been going through that change, you know, has found that it's, you know, a lot more work than expected, and starting to pull his or her hair out on the back of that as well. You know, the fact is that the benefit, you know, by having somebody like yourself, you know, that's what you've been doing for how long?
Oh, 20 years.
It's 20 years, exactly. You said that actually. So 20 years, day in, day out, in terms of what you do, you know, actually when you're able to do. So would you say somebody like yourself, would you say you could have a, you know, is there any, here's an interesting one actually, any challenges that you've came up against that you thought, that was a big challenge? Is there any that you've kind of came away from and go, do you want to know what, I've learned something new? I know you always learn something new, but something that's kind of really got you going, oh, actually.
Yeah, I one of the biggest projects from a learning, not biggest projects as far as, you know, big scale projects, but big project as far as learning goes, you know, going in a boy and coming out a man, so to speak.
Yeah. More great years.
But it's not necessarily a manufacturing based project, it was a rail based. So the project was improving basically rolling stock performance as far as reliability and availability goes for the train set, and the way they measure that is mean distance between failure. So looking at the reliability in those ways. That particular train kit that was running around about, I don't know, 3,000 odd miles mean distance between failure. So, you know, if you imagine purchasing a car and it was breaking down every 3,000 odd miles, you wouldn't be too happy. But the core to that is the way that they maintain the trains and the way that they basically process exams. So the quality of doing them, making sure that any, I guess, unplanned work is done and all the rest of it. And that project really was bringing in 3 types of stakeholders. One was a train builder, one was the train operating company, and the other one was the consultancy practice that was brought in to deploy lean within a maintenance environment. And that environment actually ended up where you was having threatening text messages coming through as a consultancy practice. There was all sorts of things that you wouldn't believe that went on in there, sabotage of the project, you know. And you start to think about, you know, why did that happen? And you know, I've done a lot of thinking on that, and really, what it boils back to is poor communication. So communication to those that are impacted by the change as to why, you know, this is taking place. Why is a consultancy practice being brought in? What are they for? So all of the resistance was really based on fear, you know, because it wasn't clear on why you were there, what you were trying to do, what you were trying to achieve, but you know, what's my involvement as far as the client system goes, and the maintenance guys, you know, what do you want from me? And that's probably the biggest learning for me. So any consultancy project that I go on to is I always have to have a green tick, or whatever you want to call it, against communication. So I will lead the client to make sure that communication about what it is that you're trying to achieve, what it is about the project, your expectations, you know, and people getting involved, the expectations, making sure that's crystal clear, and that takes a lot of effort. But
would you say that's number one in terms of?
Definitely number one, and the better that you communicate up front, and when I say communicate, I mean, you know, a heavy investment in communication, the better prepared you'll be for success. That for me is the biggest learning throughout my experience today.
Good, interesting, and you know, it's just kind of just dragging into, you know, the challenge that, you know, what would you say is so biggest challenge in terms of what you've kind of came up against as well? You know, taking that away from the people side of things, you know, the sort of size or scope of a project. Give me, you know, but what would you say?
In manufacturing, I think that generally they're a lot easier, manufacturing. And I think the smaller scale manufacturing, the easier it is. That might sound counterintuitive, but I think it seems to be the smaller the manufacturing site, you know, say if you're 150 people or whatever, the more that you can get your arms around the whole lot and see how it all connects. The larger it is, you know, and I've worked in some big blue chips, and you just get so frustrated at the pace that they go at, because it's so big. But challenges for me as far as project go, I would say would be in public sector, sector side. You know, that's a challenge where people aren't really worried about change because it's not really a profit and loss. There's no need for change. You know, we still get the same amount of money coming in. Is that your question?
I've got a friend who went from a very aggressive private business, you know, very sales aggressive. They did very, very well over a space of, you know, 10-year period or whatever, did very, very well. And then she left that role when the company was sold. And she left that role and she joined the local council. So she was in sales and then went into HR, left that business because of that, and then joined as HR within the council. Yeah. And she couldn't believe the difference in terms of the mentality, the approach. But there's pros and cons with it as well. I think, you know, and you know, you know, I think that was initially when she went in there, she thought, what, you know, nobody cares. There's no a care, passion, or whatever, drive, motivation is. But I bet you that would be quite, you know. So how would, you know? I'm just cautious because I'll just wrap it up soon, Lee. But how would you approach that type of? Would it be the same type of approach where you're looking at each individual person?
Yeah, exactly the same approach. It's exactly the same approach. It's just that the environment is less dynamic to change, so it's slower. So you have to get your mind around, actually, this is going to be slow. You still get the change, but it's just slower. And it's not as exciting, it's frustrating. So I'd rather work in a manufacturing facility that's up for change, does the right communication, sells the vision, gets the people involved, identifies the key people. Here we go, Lee, work with those, and there we go. We crack on and get it done.
Good. Lee, I want to thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I do appreciate it. It's been really good getting that insight there. I've learned a lot there. And I know it's been quite, you know, I know we've been keeping it really high level in terms of what we've been discussing. We've been digging a wee bit deep here and there. But I think what's came really out of that is the number one being communication. Making sure that communication is prioritised right from the outset of any change, any process or anything at all that's looking to be done. And that's not just a letter going out or an email going out to staff. That's a proper investment into making sure people are bought into what we're doing, which makes the job 10 times easier, I'm guessing, in terms of you getting in there and you can make a real significant improvement. And then obviously off the back of that as well is actually looking at each individual person. You know, what drives that individual person, and then pulling all that together is what would be the word for it? You know, a collaborative approach.
Yeah, structure.
Yeah, to drive that forward. Have I summarised that all right, Lee?
You have, and it is around, you know, making sure that you go through in a structured way. So that's what I give personally is a structured way of coordinating change, really. Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope our listeners have enjoyed listening to this episode. You know, and if you are a manufacturing leaders, you know, a head of operations, whoever it might be, who might be going through some change at the moment within your business, and is looking to possibly have a conversation, you know, and see if there's any value in someone like Lee coming into their business, a fresh set of eyes, somebody out with the organisation that can come in and facilitate that process and give you time back, then you can reach out to Lee. Just double checking your email address, Lee. I've got it down as Lee, Lee, at lrkconsulting.co.uk.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, good. So that's Lee at lrkconsulting.co.uk. But thanks very much for your time, Lee.
No, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
All right, thank you.